Armed officers will put a containment external.
A midnight briefing at Kentish Town Police Station in North London. A drive-by shooting has been linked to this gang member, Danny Downs. His DNA found on bullet casing. Intelligence suggests he keeps the gun at home. In the early hours, these officers aim to arrest him.
The subject that these officers are going to go up against has either immediate possession of a firearm or access to a firearm. Clearly, he has used the firearm in public space, so that's the reason why armed officers are deployed.
Firearms officers, the unit known as MO19, don't get paid anything more for carrying a gun. What they get is dangerous call-outs and a huge responsibility strapped to their shoulders. But when an officer who opened fire on the job was charged with murder, it sent shockwaves through this unit. Sergeant Martyn Blake had been on a similar mission to these officers.
OK, we're going to do it.
In September 2022, police were following a vehicle because it had been linked to a shooting in Brixton.
Do it here. It's in line.
When it turned this corner, Martyn Blake's vehicle blocked its path. They didn't know who was driving the car, and with armed officers now on foot, the driver, Chris Kaba, tried to ram his way out. Seconds later, the 23-year-old was shot by a single round through the windscreen. Chris Kaba later died in hospital, and Martyn Blake was charged with his murder. The judge allowed him to be named, and in court he argued that he'd opened fire because it was his genuinely held belief that the driver posed a serious threat to life. And in October last year, Blake was found not guilty. But now the IOPC says he will face a gross misconduct hearing, adding there was sufficient evidence to indicate he may have breached the police professional standards regarding his use of force. After the jury verdict, it emerged that days before he was shot, Chris Kaba himself was alleged to have shot someone in a nightclub, chasing his victim outside, shooting him again. Equality activist Stafford Scott watched the Blake trial and believes it left many questions.
What we have again is this notion of honestly held belief. That's why we've been trying consistently to go to the European courts of justice, because we won't get justice in this system, to make a judgment that honestly held belief must be rational. And let's remember, right? The media went mad about Chris and Chris's antecedents and what he was up to after the case. But at the time that Martyn Blake shot that young man, he didn't even know it was Chris Kaba behind the wheel. No. He didn't know who was behind the wheel.
The Met has expressed disappointment in the watchdog's decision, saying it will weigh heavily on Martyn Blake's shoulders and more widely on firearms officers. Like any operation, this one in Kentish Town relies on these officers having confidence in their training. And they are trained only to open fire if they believe there is a risk to life. But the Blake case has shown that their split-second risk assessments could be analysed for months, and with them in the dock.
Danny Downs, you're under arrest on suspicion of possession of a firearm.
In this raid, as with the vast majority of operations, the subject is arrested without shots fired.
So a knife found in a sheet found on one of the beds, and then the firearm found down the side of the sofa, which is quite readily available to subjects.
We got him safely, no shots fired. We can be nothing but happy with that.
The weapon seized, this Rambo knife and this gun with ammunition.
It is a satisfaction of getting the gun back, but unfortunately there's guns out there, and we're doing these jobs very regularly. We get a gun off the street, we get the person arrested, and as with every firearms operation, a successful firearms operation for the Met and for the country in general is one where shots aren't fired.
Martyn Blake could now lose his job. Campaigners and members of Chris Kaba's family welcome the additional scrutiny. His colleagues say he's already paid a heavy price for doing what he's trained to do. Jason Farrell, Sky News.